Hello and welcome to Tear Down These Walls podcast. Here we tear down the walls of silence, shame, and stigma, one story at a time. And for episode 16, I will be doing a podcast by myself. And I talk about grief. I suppose I'm not sure whether anyone can be an expert on grief. And this is not an expert's opinion. It's not a manual on how to deal with grief because I don't believe there is one. I think we can gain some understanding from books and from listening to people share their experience. But for everybody, it's so individual. It's a very lonely place, grief, to be grieving. And there's so many different components as to how someone might be grieving. And I suppose it shows up in so many different ways. And the reason why I wanted to do this podcast was particularly the last few days. I went abroad with my daughter. It wasn't a planned trip as such. My youngest son, Luca, bought it as a Christmas gift for myself and Carla. And he booked us 2 nights away in Amsterdam. Amsterdam is Holland, is a country that we would be very familiar with. We spent a lot of time there when the kids were younger, and we had a lot of really good memories, family memories there. My husband spent a lot of time there, and it's also where he died. It was his final destination in life. And I had went back to Amsterdam many times in the past 10 years. It will be my husband's 10th anniversary on the 6th of March. And while over there, I had a lot of time to reflect on my grief in the past 10 years, but not only in the past 10 years, throughout my life, and how much it has shaped me and how it showed up for me. And I've read a lot of books on grief, and I'm always interested in hearing people's experience. And I was wondering how I would structure this, but I thought I would just speak about my experience. Because I know there's so many people out there who are in different stages of grief, and whether it's a month, whether it's a year, whether it's 4 years. And I think what I've learned looking back is in the ways that it showed up for me. But getting back to being on the trip and going there many a times, and it was my first time to ever go back sober. Every time I went back there, I went back there with my children, with my mother, with my sister, with my brother. I went back with my new partner, and every time I went back there, I got absolutely hammered drunk. And at the time, I just thought I was enjoying myself, and I was telling myself, I really know this city and I have so many good memories. But on looking back from being there sober, I could tell how much I was grieving and how much I was suppressing the grief. So I'll talk a little bit about how grief has showed up for me throughout my life, I suppose. And as I've spoke about in the first podcast, grief has been something that I've lived with my whole life. And it's not just a feeling to that particular person, it creates an atmosphere for people. My first experience being only 9 months. I wouldn't have known my father, but I'm pretty sure if you look at a 9-month-old child, they pick up on the atmosphere around them. And maybe the changes in people, maybe the attention they used to receive, maybe the routine. All that gets dismantled when somebody dies. And I know this to be true because grief continued to follow me throughout my life, losing people. And it's not just about losing people, it's about massive changes in life. losing a home, breaking up with a partner, becoming really ill, the loss of anything, the loss of oneself through addiction, through a relationship. I mean, grief, grief shows up in so many different areas of our life, but I'm particularly talking about the death of loved ones. I suppose as a young child, how it would have shown up. I suffered with anxiety always. I was always scared. And I became hyper vigilant in watching the people around me. At the age of 12, when I lost my stepfather, I remember the changes in my mother. And I remember constantly trying to make sure she was okay and checking on her. What was her humour like today? Is she happy or is she sad? And that creates its own level of anxiety for children. And the routine has changed and life as we knew it changed. And I remember always thinking she'll come back someday. And that doesn't happen because death and grief changes us indefinitely. It changes the shape of us. It changes everything about us. And I think what we try to do is we try to hang on to the old self. And that causes more grief. But we don't know that at the time. I remember the next loss I suffered was my Uncle Paddy. And I remember the changes in my Nana, who had always been a sense of safety and security, as well as my mother. And I remember the changes in her and watching and waiting and longing for her to come back to the person I knew. And the reason why I'm telling all this is because I suppose I knew from these losses that things changed indefinitely. I had that experience that death is death. People don't come back. You can't wish them. So again, it got to losing my husband. And I still say this, and my friends have said it to me. They remember how I behaved initially after his death. I didn't have a sense of denial as in he's going to come back. I knew what death was. I knew when someone is dead, they're gone and everything changes. But I suppose being 34 then, and what I didn't realise then and I realise now is I became extremely dependent on people for many areas, for safety, for love, for security, for happiness, for joy. And when I lost my husband, I remember going down to the local GP. I needed Xanax. My nervous system was crashing. I was drinking heavily. I wasn't sleeping. And I knew the Xanax worked for me at that particular time. And I remember going into the surgery and my blood pressure was sky high. And he had to keep me there till it came down a bit. And I said to him, I didn't just lose him. I lost all those people from my past all over again. And that was just something that came out of my mouth because that's how I was feeling. I felt like that lost little child. I wasn't the rebellious, angry teenager just yet, but that was on the way. So I was very much put on a suit of armour. That's what grief did. I tried to suppress it and I tried to act like I accept this. I know it's happened. I know things are never going to be the same again. But I'm going to be really strong and get up and get on with it. And I laugh when I think back of the insanity of what I really believed in the first few years of my grief. I thought by ticking boxes and putting a brave face on, and I try to keep everything the same. If I can get back to cooking family dinners and having dinner around the table with everybody and pretending that this massive thing hasn't happened, that life would just go on normal enough to be able to function. I remember what sleep was like. I remember hating to go to sleep because when I woke up from a sleep, I had to relive the nightmare of, has this happened to me? Has this happened to us? And it was then the dreams. You would dream of that person alive again. And it was like adding insult to injury. We're having them for a few moments again and believing that the worst thing hadn't happened, just to wake up again and know that you had to accept fully that this person wasn't there any longer. So I remember how I hated to go to sleep because I had to relive it every single morning that I woke up again. And then it was too much. The grief was too much. And I suppose the thing about being a mother and having 3 children who has lost a father is it's not just about us. We try to carry our children's grief, but I knew I wasn't strong enough for that. I knew I couldn't carry my own. I certainly wasn't going to be able to carry theirs. So my addiction again became my grief. And I speak about when I first started to drink, how it soothed me and it eased me from the inside, all those anxieties and fears I had as a kid melted away every time I drank or I used drugs or I took tablets. So I knew I had a solution to how I was feeling. And that's how the alcoholism elevated for me after my husband's death. And I remember people saying things, and these are, I'm sure, people who are struggling, and whether it's a year or 2 years, they hear, and family members are really at a loss as to how to help us. And they're also grieving. They're grieving for brother-in-laws, for son-in-laws. So it's very difficult to help people when we're hurting too, and when we can't help ourselves. But there is lines that people use, and it's, you need to snap out of it. It's been 2 years. You need to get up and get on with it. Or look at so and so. She lost her partner, and she's not like this. And I remember, people saying things like this and just wanting to scream and telling them to, like, fuck off. You have no idea what I'm going through. And that is the truth. We have no idea what people are going through in their grief. So my addiction became my grief. My leaving home, avoidance, escapism. And then I thought, I didn't want the life I had without him. The family didn't work. It's dinner times were sad, holidays, any money I had left. I just booked trips, hoping that I could find happiness and joy again and escape. But none of it ever worked. It doesn't work. So what I did then was I did what I have always done my whole life, and I've never realised that I did this up until the past few years. I thought if I can create a new life with somebody new, I can forget about my own life. I can create a new version of reality for myself. And that's exactly what I did. I tried to move on really quickly. I tried to replace my husband, although I would tell you that that's not what I was doing. But really, I was looking for someone to give me joy again, to make me happy, to keep me safe, for security, because I was so scared of being by myself and I had no tools to live. I didn't know who I was, what I was good at. I had no qualifications. And I thought the easiest way to fix all this is to find someone to help repair me and to fix me again, because that's exactly what I did with my husband. I speak about him loving me like a child. He was like a father figure. He was many things. He was a husband, a partner, a friend. But I came to realize through therapy, he was more like a father figure to me, because he did all the things that a father would do for someone. He loved me. He kept me safe. He gave me security. He made me laugh. If I needed a new coat at winter, he would buy me a really good coat to keep me warm. So you can see where I'm going with all this. So I don't know how I could have grieved other than the way I grieved. But I do know that trip to Amsterdam a few days ago really opened my eyes to the insanity of what grief does to people. So as the years progressed, before I got sober, addiction is a massive part of people's grief, I think. There's always something under that addiction, whether it's trauma due to losses or death or abuse. So for me, and then it showed up in physically, we can talk about grief, attitudes. My hair fell out. I had a beautiful mane of hair and that I loved. I always loved my hair. And that fell out after my first treatment in Smermore. I had lost a massive amount of weight. I remember someone saying to me, "You look like a teenage boy." And they weren't trying to be mean. They were just saying what they saw. I remember undressing myself in front of my friend Nicola one day and she gasped. And I was like, I know. I could see it, but I couldn't do anything about it. And everybody was trying to help, but nobody knew how to help. I didn't know how to help myself. I suppose lifting the addiction was the first thing I needed to do, because this was the biggest tool that I had to suppress my grief. And getting sober, I had to find ways. I had to look around me and see all the things that I had done and did to try and suppress my grief. And I know there's lots of people out there who are doing the same. Your grief will show up in your running, in your walking, in your excessive exercise, in your eating. I know this is how grief still shows up for me. I know when I don't want to sit with feelings and thoughts that I have, that I'll walk and I'll walk and I'll walk after I run and after I do a quick weight session. Nothing seems to fill that hole that so many of us who have suffered with loss and grief and addiction talk about all the time. We're trying to fill something up. I want to get back to the trip in Amsterdam. So as I say, nearly 10 years on, and I'm really looking forward to spending time with my daughter or talking about the places that we go to. And as soon as I land in Schiphol Airport, I feel the chest tightening. And I know that that's my anxiety coming back. And the difference now and then is I'm not looking to suppress it or to take something to make myself feel better. I'll sit with it. What is this I'm feeling? I come out of the train station and instantly I see past memories. I see him cycling on a bike. I see the kids in the front box. I see us parked up at the side of a street that I'm familiar with. I go to the restaurants that we've eaten in, myself and Carla, and I look at her as a grown woman now, and the memories I have as of a very young child. We, I bring her to the American hotel, and I show her that that's where we got engaged. And I've told her this before. That was one of the happiest days of my life, because I always had this impression of myself that, and I tell this to Carla, and she gets quite sad, that I wasn't the marrying type. So when he proposed, and we never spoke about marriage or getting engaged, when he proposed, I couldn't believe it. Although we had an amazing relationship and we were really good friends and we had 3 children, I still didn't think that I was the marrying type. I don't know where that came from or why I had that belief system, but that's how I felt. So, and I suppose I was able to look through the windows and I was able to see us sitting there and having that moment, that joyous moment that I will always say was one of the happiest days of my life so far. And I didn't have to walk away. I didn't have to run. I didn't have to go on a 10K walk to get rid of the feelings. I was able to accept that that was a past memory and a very happy one at that. And I was able to talk about it. If I felt like crying, I would have cried, but I didn't. I was able to stay present with it and share that lovely experience with my daughter. And that was what most of the trip was like. It's funny, and I'm not sure whether this is part of what was actually happening, if this is healing. But on the second night of the trip, I got violently sick. I woke up during the night and I probably twice, 3 times actually, and I woke Carla up and we had eaten the same foods. I'm not sure whether it was a bug, whether it's coincidental, or whether it was a lot of grief that had come out in maybe a natural way. What is a natural way to grieve? I don't know. As I said, I'm not an expert, I'm just sharing my experience. So it was a very interesting trip to be able to reflect on grief and how it has shaped me throughout my life. And I suppose that's the I'm trying to, it's not even a message I'm trying to send out. What I'm trying to say is there is no right or wrong way in grieving. And I would say, look at the tools that you're using. For me, for a long time, it was alcohol, which didn't work and created its own set of problems. People too, I would say, and I've also learned this in the last 4 years. Codependency was a massive one for me too. I depended on people for a number of things, for my happiness, for my joy, for my safety, for my security, to make myself feel like I was being validated. And what happens is when we look to any one person to tick all these boxes for us, fill all these boxes for us, when that person lives or when that person dies, where do we source this from? How do we continue to live without running from ourselves? So I still find it hard to convey and to put into words grief. But what I noticed I had to do with the addiction and with all the grief that I had experienced, and how much it was showing up in relationships, everyday living. Like, it's like what everybody says when they're trying to get well or to heal. You gotta look inside and look at what's going on for me here. Why am I going out on my third walk of the day? Why am I eating excessively today? Why am I in this relationship with this person or with these people, as in group of friends, whatever it is? What are these people filling for me that I cannot fill for myself at the minute? Am I that lost? Am I that broken? So for me, it was about looking in and trying to figure out what I was trying to feel inside with other people, with substances, with places. And it has been quite a journey for me. For every issue I had, even with the grief, was all got to do with unresolved issues I had from a young child that I carried into my teenage years and then into my adulthood. And I look at my children, and they're all dealing with their grief very differently. My eldest son would be very like me. He would find it difficult to sit with and speak about, and he definitely would lean more towards the escapism. My daughter Carla, she amazes me in how she can articulate how she's feeling. She went to Holland by herself once and was able to walk around. But she did share with me earlier, before I started this podcast, that she went there in hope of finding him. And she thought that he would eventually turn around the corner and she'd see him. And I thought, I was obviously at home. I allowed her to go. And I thought how lonely that must have been for her. And isn't it that denial? You know, if someone is really gone for good. But other than that, I see how different we are with our grief. She's much less needy. She doesn't look externally for people to try and save her and fix her. And I've learned a lot from watching her, particularly in the latter. And it made me realise how dysfunctional I have been and can be as a human being. And I still am. As I said, I have the addiction under control regarding alcoholism and drug taking, but it still shows up for me. Some days when the days feel like they're too much, and the 24 hours I'm overwhelmed mentally and physically and emotionally. And I will excessively walk, run, do. So I don't think grief goes away. I think it lives in us. It's always there, but it's trying to find a way to manage it in the best possible way and notice it when it's rearing its head. So as I said, it still shows up for me. I think that's what happened while I was in Holland. I think maybe getting sick, that was the grief showing up for me. You know, and I had moments of sadness and it's freezing cold. That didn't fucking help. But yeah, and I have my youngest son who doesn't. He fucking hates therapy. He's told me, and he doesn't like to talk too much about it. But I see how it affects them all differently, and that's just one family. So for all the people out there who is in early bereavement and grief, I would say talking about it and being honest. And that fucking I'm grand and smiling and pretending everything is okay. I remember days where I would tell people I'm grand, I'm okay, and would go home. And the definition of insanity would be walking down a street 20 minutes before I would go home and pour a straight vodka and then acts like toothpaste and mirrors. And it's just one of the things that I would do when I was initially forced grieving. And there was many. I wish my sister would do this with me because um, tragedy can be quite funny depending on how far we are, from the thing that has just happened. But I know when me and my sister get together and we talk about the first few months after Sheriff's death, we can't help but laugh. I had a therapist who was a comedian in his spare time, and he told me that comedy derived from great tragedy. And I'm reflecting back on some of the things that had been said and done after my husband passed away. It's really, really hard not to laugh at it. I remember, in the first few days finding a bag of elastic bands and making this massive sized ball with the elastic bands just to distract myself from my head. I remember my husband was going to be cremated, and I remember he had just bought a suit for a wedding, and he had worn it once a few months previous, maybe a year before. And I thought, okay, this is what I'm going to put on him when I'm laying him out. It was a beautiful suit. He looked great in it. And I remember my friends, Nicola, Carolyn and Jamie, all sitting around the dining room table. God knows who else was there. I'm sure at least two of them was there. And I had asked, will I get this suit back? And unknowns to me, everyone was watching each other and thought, does she realise she's cremating him? And I says, after I do, but I wanted that suit back. And don't ask why I wanted the suit back, but it's crazy things like this, that you look back on and you see how mad that your thinking was. I'm sort of transporting myself back, and there's so many, crazy stories that I could tell. They're really dark, and a lot of them isn't funny. But I'm not sure whether this is going to help anybody out there. I really am. It's something that I have great interest in, what death does to us and loss and how grief shapes us. But I thought maybe if I just shared my experience of some of the things that's happened and where I'm at right now. 10 years is a long time. It's a decade. I always say to myself, we have these days where we think, imagine the person, whoever it is, your mother, your father, your partner, a child, walking back into your life. And it really stops me in my tracks, because I think I would have to reintroduce myself to my husband all over again because of the changes that his death has had on me, and at how much I had to stop seeking outside and look in to make all these changes that I've made. So it would be like getting to know each other all over again. And I was a great person for being a chameleon. So you could put me into any environment and I could be anyone you wanted me to be. I really could. He used to slag and say sometimes he comes home and I'm in art class, another time I'm cooking. He loved food, absolutely loved it. And I went to great lengths to to be a good cook. I went on a culinary skills course in Fáilte Island, and I literally went for the interview and they asked me why I wanted to be there, and I said, my husband loves food, he loves to eat, and I want to be able to cook really nice meals. And the reason why I share this is because I was so eager to please and to be loved and to be validated that I was willing to do anything and be anybody just to have that love of someone and admiration. And I say, starting this podcast, I had a massive desire to feel seen and feel heard and to be understood. But I suppose you could say, rather than waiting on someone to come and hear me and see me, I started this so I could give myself a platform to just share my experiences. And look, I know how much me listening to somebody going through grief or addiction or single parent and all these things that really are difficult. I know how much it helped. Even if it was just one sentence that somebody said, it could flip my thinking for the day. So that's me hope with this, as somebody who is in mourning or has lost someone and has had a really, I would say, interesting decade of my life. I've had some of the worst moments. And I've had some of the most inspiring moments of my life as well, getting to find out who I am and what I'm capable of. And I could never, ever, ever sit by myself. I would have went to any crowd, spoke to anyone, rather than be by myself. A weekend wasn't a great weekend unless I spent it with people. And one of the great changes is that I really enjoy my own company now. I enjoy knowing that I'm going home to watch a good movie, or I bought a new book and I'll curl up. I know how boring this sounds, but trust me, a few years ago, if someone had have shared this, I would have been like, they fucking crackers. Curl up a bowl of fruit, have a nice pastry, a treat. I would have never looked at this as, self-care, sitting with myself, enjoying my own home, my own company. And it's one of the real joys that I have in my life now, is that I like me. I like spending time with myself. I love people's company too, but it's not a necessity anymore. I don't feel like I always have to be surrounded by people. I don't feel like I have to change myself on a daily basis to fit in and to be accepted. I'm finally starting to feel like I'm enough, whether you not everybody's going to like you, and not everybody's going to be interested in what you have to say. But if you like you, and if the stuff you're talking about interests you, well, isn't that good enough, I suppose? I'm trying to think of other things that probably came up in the past 10 years that would... There was a few things, actually. I did write a couple of things down because I find it very hard to structure this conversation. It can be quite chaotic in my head trying to explain grief and what it was like. But there was a couple of things that I say, and me and my sister laughs about when I say it. There should be an organisation called the Grief Police. And for anybody who has a lot of loss and who has been impacted severely and then ultimately loses someone, there should be the grief police that comes and takes us away for a while to help us manage our thoughts and our behaviours before we're fit for human consumption. And I say that with a little smile, but the seriousness of this is very real when I look back on the devastation that I caused people who are already devastated, and the lives of people, because I didn't care and I was hurting so much and I wanted to numb out and switch off. I was able to hurt people very easily because of my own grief. And it wasn't like I woke up one day and thought, well, if I'm hurting, everybody's going to fucking hurt. But this is what we do when we're so hurt and we can't access it and we numb out. We just end up causing destruction and devastation around us. I'd say a few things that always kept my sanity in the times when it was hard to find was being outside. I spoke about this before. Nature has always been my saviour. Walking, I'm not talking about the excessive type that I do sometimes when the head is fast, but just listening to the sea or watching birds, the mountains, any place that can really make our problems feel less than they are that day. And nature has an amazing way of doing that for us. I can't fully explain it, but I know I feel it. And that's the thing. We can't always explain what we're feeling because it's a feeling. It's hard to describe. There is plenty of help out there, but I think we got to tackle. I mean, when we wake up in the morning and we're grieving and things are heavy and we're numb and it's too much. Spoke about this in a little video that I did. One small thing to break how we're feeling or thinking that day. It can be as small as brushing your teeth, making a coffee, picking up the phone, and being able. I had one person, my friend Nicola was very present in the aftermath of my husband's death. And friends are really important. And I have many friends. And a lot of people that are there as much as they can be there. And other people have a lot going on in their lives. So I don't want this to come across in any way that I feel like people wasn't there. People were there as much as they could be. And it didn't matter anyway who was there. That's what I actually want to say. It didn't matter how much people were showing up for me. Most of the time I didn't want them there. And a lot of the time I put on an act and I told everyone I was okay and I wasn't drinking that much. And my friends say, you look great. Like I lost loads of weight and I'd know if I was going to their house to blow dry my hair and put my smile on. But with Nicola, it was harder to hide because she was constantly a constant there. And I was able to be absolutely batshit crazy and tell her every single little detail of what was really going on in my life. And she heard things that and saw things that she probably can never erase from her memory. So my apologies, Nicola, for that. I always say that I know I have a lot to give back. But I would speak absolute madness to her and behave in crazy ways, and I would share with her all the stuff that was going on in my crazy life. I was like a teenager again, out running wild, causing mayhem. And I'll say one thing that she was able to do. She just sat and listened. And sometimes I'd see the sadness in her face or the shock, because I've shocked her more than once in my life. But she always just sat and held a space for me to be angry, crazy, mad, sad. And sometimes she wouldn't even give a reply back. She would just sit and listen and say nothing. And if you have a person like that in your life, be mad, be crazy, be angry, be sad, just find one person where you can express how you truly feel. because I know that you're walking down the street, Mary and Paddy are saying, "How are you? I'm sorry for your loss." And you're like, "I'm actually really good. Thanks very much. Yeah, the kids are doing okay. Yeah, no, me mad, it's good." Bollocks. You're dying inside. The kids are fucking dying inside. And you don't have it in you to give them what they need. You can't give it to yourself. You can't give it to your kids. We all have that one person, actually. I'm going to refrain from saying that. Not everybody does. But I promise you, there is one person out there, whether it's on a helpline, whether it's a family member you haven't seen in years, there is someone that you can be just you with. And that's what helps us. People not telling us, you should be over this by now. It's been 2 years. It's been 5 years. Would you cop onto yourself? Would you snap out of it? Would you take a look at yourself? I can fucking see myself and I can feel myself. I don't need anybody telling me. I just need someone to listen and be there and hold the space for this madness that I'm feeling inside. For the insanity of what death does to us. What grief does to us. Loss. No matter what form of loss that is. And then we try harder. Look at how brave I am. Look at how strong I am. Look at how great I'm doing. But you know you're not. You know you're secretly dying inside. And you know the drinking and the walking and the running and the eating. You know it's masking the sorrow and the sadness and the loss. I went in there for a minute, so I hope that helps somebody out there if they're feeling those feelings. And I hope you reach out to that one person who can hold that space for your lunacy. That's what I call mine. It was lunacy at the time. I heard this beautiful quote and it made me really think about things. You may have not got to spend the rest of your life with them, but they got to spend the rest of their life with you. And I remember when I first read that or heard it, I remember it wasn't about me. It was about the person who had died. And I never thought about it like that before. They will never have to suffer the loss of you. They got to spend the rest of their life with you and with their children and with their mother and with their father. And unfortunately for us, yeah, we have to sit with all these shitty feelings and the process of grief and the acceptance of it. But we also get to still be here. We're still in the game. We get to spend Christmases and birthdays and everyday life, dinners, conversations. How was work today? You don't seem in great form. We get to have those little arguments. Did you not clean up after yourself? Did I not ask you to walk the dog today? And we get so stressed about getting old, about the wrinkles on our face, the grey hair, the body changes, the menopause. And really and truly think of all the people who have passed along to us and what they would do and give to have those wrinkles, those grey hairs, those arguments with the kids, the worries that we have of everyday life that we all have. So this is what I do now when I'm having a tough day. I think, what would they do to have one more day like that? We get to still be here for now. None of us know. So I do my best. I can't always do it. I'm human. I always say this. I have many more tools available to myself now without having to depend on other people to help fix me and save me and love me. I'm learning to do that for myself. And that's what grief has given me. That's what years of suffering, of losses, of addiction, and losing him, I get to find me. Every grey cloud has a silver lining, and something beautiful comes out of the worst situations in our life. But for many of us, that's in the thick of it. I know you can't see that right now. I couldn't see it. And I don't fucking think I would have liked to hear somebody say that to me either. But I'm just sharing my experience. I have watched children, really hurt children, sad, flourish into adults who depend on themselves for work, for love. And I'm not sure the life that I was living, those children would have the tools that they have now today, because they had to dig deep too. They had to truly find their strength and their courage and how brave they were, because one parent died and one left the building. So they had to dig deep to find who they truly were too. So as I said, sometimes we can't see in the thick of it, but something beautiful and wonderful can happen out of all that darkness and sadness. I think I've said this probably twice, 3 times. But I really, really, really hope that this helps somebody out there. I really do. And look, every night I pray for everybody that I've had in my life, for everything they've taught me, for the way they loved me. Because it builds character. Whether the love is good, bad, indifferent, for all their little behaviours, for all the things they did and they didn't do that I've had to learn from. And just to finish up, so I don't start rambling. You know, I've said this before. The way I deal with the loss, particularly the last loss I've had. There's a saying as well, you cannot grieve only one loss, past and present. And I never truly understood what that meant. But I think what it means is when we lose someone today in the present time, all the other losses come right back up to the surface, especially if we haven't been able to deal with them for whatever reason, or we've been in addiction for years and we've been suppressing. It doesn't go away. It catches up on you. You know, the best way is to try and sit with the feelings that you have today, this very minute. Let them in and then let them go. They might want to stay 20 minutes, half an hour, an hour. But I think the best thing for me today is to be able to feel them instead of run away or numb them. But I think to myself, and this is my experience because I've had children, for me, my husband will never truly be dead. He can't, he's all around me. I experienced that this weekend. You know, he's in the children, he's in me. The food that we eat, the music that we listen to, the movies that we watch. A look from Carla. Lucas Ways, his organisation skills. Clayton, who carries him in everything he does, in all the places he goes. He carries him with him. So because of that, and with the memories that I have, that I can look at and smile and feel and accept, what wonderful memories I have. And now I can take them into my present and look at them and smile and be sad. But I don't have to run from them anymore. And I know that I'll always see him through those children. And I remember somebody saying, people can take everything away from you, anything they want, but they can never take your memories. So, it's not possible to make great memories all the time. But I think if we're aware of how precious life is and how short it is, we can start living better lives, be better people, and enjoy what time we have left. Life can be absolutely devastatingly hard. But what I do know for sure is that it can be absolutely beautiful, and we can get through anything in this life. And we can come out the other side stronger and braver. And the biggest thing for me is self-discovery, starting to know who I am, and I'm okay, and I'm good enough. And I'm so excited for what the future holds. It's nice not having to depend on everything for everyone. And anything I'm looking for is right here. It's all in here. Sometimes I just have to dig a little deeper and look a little harder some days, but we all have it in us. Thank you so much for listening.